Hello everyone. Hiya. Can everyone still hear me? Give me a thumbs up from the organiser. You can hear me still. Great. Fantastic. Thanks to the organisers. It's really great to be here, and I hope you get something out of all of the sessions. So as Kevin said, I work at the Open University, and because we've got people from around the world, I'll just briefly describe what the Open University does and how it works. So we are a correspondence university. We're not a face-to-face university anyway. So what you're doing now, all of a sudden, that's how we work anyway. So there is a lot that we've learned over the years, and I'll try and pull out, enough points for you to be able to remember them and for them to be useful. So I'm going to focus on video because you've moved from face-to-face, so you might want to incorporate some video, but there's lots of other methods you'll want to consider, and I'll address that a little bit at the start. But what I wanted to say before I started sharing my screen was, I'll do some of this sharing my screen and talking over slides, and I'll do some of it where you can see me talking. And I just wanted to point that out now so that you can think, is it easier to listen to me when you're looking at me? Or do you find it easier to listen to me when you're looking at the slides I'm explaining? So then you can think, oh, actually, which did I prefer? Which might I carry forward? I'm one of the people who finds it easier to listen to someone when I can see their face, but you might just be happy to look at the maths. Okay, so I will share my screen a bit because it helps me to remember what I was going to say. So let's pull out this. And then if you can't see it, please let me know. And I want it as a slideshow from the beginning. Okay. Okay, so if you can see my screen, can you see the chat in the screen on top of my slides, or do you just see the slides? Do you want to just give me a, Kevin, could you just say whether you can see just the slides or whether you can see the chat window on top of it?
Just the slides, can't see the chat window, it's fine.
Okay, because I'm keeping an eye on the chat, but I will look away from the chat for most of this because it's quite distracting to try and speak and read at the same time. And that's something you're going to find when you're doing online tutorials. While you're speaking to your students and you're trying to read their feedback, it's a big concentration exercise. So the first thing I wanted to bring your attention to, and this has also come up with the first speaker, is you need to decide what the structure of your teaching is going to be. And with the Open University, the spine of the teaching is the written course materials. So they have basically textbooks, but they are specific prepared textbooks by us. And they have gone through a couple of authors and a few editors and a whole publishing house. So obviously, we invest a lot of time and money in our written course materials because they are the backbone of our teaching. You're going to have to do this in much more quickly, not in the same way, but you might still want to use written course materials as your foundation. So if you've got your lecture notes or if you've got a textbook that the course is based on, that might help you hit the ground running. But whatever you do as the spine of your course, you're going to have to think about that and set the other materials around it. And whatever your core materials are, hand in hand with your core teaching materials is going to be the assessment. And at the Open University, when we are preparing professional development about course writing, they say that you should be thinking about the assessment almost first. What are you going to ask the students? And then you can prepare your teaching materials accordingly. So think about what you want to teach them, but think about what you're going to assess them on. And I guess in the current climate, you're going to have to think how you're going to assess it. So with the Open University, we've got the textbooks, then we've got the assessment. And alongside that, those supporting materials, there are written exercises embedded within the course materials. And then we have offline, supplemental, extra exercise books as well. We also have online quizzes using Stack, and there's a separate talk on that, so I won't talk about it. But basically, lots and lots of practice. There's tons and tons of practice. Then we use video clips just to model, to illustrate tricky worked examples. So we don't use it for everything. It isn't our spine. We use it for tricky worked examples. And because we know, obviously, learners do learn in different ways, and that's why it's nice to have a range of materials. I am a person who learns better from videos and listening. The assessment is then supported by tutorials, and there's also email support from a tutor. And what I wanted to say, whilst this is a tricky time, there are some bonuses to teaching at a distance, and that is you can prepare your teaching materials in advance, and then you get to allocate which time is for your students and which time is for your other work. So you're not necessarily going to be interrupted. You know, this is the work you'll do for teaching, and this is the work you'll do for research, and you can get things done in advance. I think face-to-face universities are going to want to think about peer support. How are you going to replicate that very good peer support your students have had whilst it was face-to-face with what they're going to be doing when they're, you know, away from each other? So the last speaker asked a little bit about how could you get the students to engage with some of this peer support and engage with conversation. We have forums where students can correspond, which the module teams can see. But I've actually found that if the students have their own forum that we can't see, or, you know, we're there as we're lurking, they communicate much better if we're not there. So that might be something to think about. So I know the WhatsApp groups are very busy. I know the Facebook groups are very busy, but I know the Open University sponsored forums, not so much. Okay, so I think what I might do is I might try and take this down now, so that I can talk without you seeing the slideshow. Okay, so it's back to my face now, if that's okay. Because I think I prefer to be able to see you at the same time. So is everybody with me so far? You'll find that the first thing that you need to think about is your structure. Now, what are we going to think about in terms of actual videos? When might we use the videos and how might we do them? So we've got 3 main ways that you might do videos. The first way is a screencast, and that is where you are videoing your screen and talking over it. The second way is if you are giving tutorials synchronously, you might record those tutorials. And what I would say is, I would strongly encourage you to record your tutorials, because what we find is students attend our tutorials in certain numbers, and something like 4 times the amount of students who come will actually watch the recording. So recording that tutorial, you know, makes it much, much more valuable. And it's not just that they can watch it more than once. And the last thing you might do is just a straightforward piece to camera. And that just depends on what you're most comfortable with. Right, so how might you do a screencast? We'll go back to sharing so that you can see what I'm talking about. Okay, so can you see, oh, that's good, I can see everything now. Right, so you should be able to see something that says screencasts, hardware and software. Could you just, and you've now disappeared, video people. Kevin, can you just give me a yes if you can see this?
Yes, I can see it.
Yeah, and is it big enough? Can you see the actual, do you need me to make?
You might want to go slideshow.
I don't. If you can see it, then I don't want to go slideshow because it makes everything else disappear on my screen. Sorry about that, guys. So if you are going to do a screencast, that is, you will want to prepare some slides in advance. And in the Open University, we prefer to then do handwriting on top of those slides and talking at the same time. So explaining it as if they're just looking at your board and they're not looking at you. We favour handwriting over just pre-prepared slides because it moderates your speed, but it also provides a kind of, you're modelling to the student how you want to explain the maths. So there are real, you know, educational good reasons for handwriting on top of the slides. That said, it is really tricky, and I think the first speaker said this, it's quite tricky just getting used to the, you know, the digital pen. All of it's quite tricky, and so you might revert to pre-prepared slides. If you are going to write on your slides, you'll need some sort of writing tool, and I think the cheapest thing you can plug into your computer is the Wacom Bamboo. It just plugs in as a USB. But you might also just be able to do it on your iPad, especially if you've got an iPad that has a pen. You'll also need a good microphone. The one thing students will really complain about is if you have poor audio. So if you were going to spend money on anything, spend money on the microphone. And so the one I've suggested here is a Yeti. That's just one that I've bought myself, which, you know, is used for podcasts and has good quality. It's about £60 or something. Your department should get it. So do concentrate on your audio, get your audio right. It's okay if your screen goes a bit fuzzy. They can make out what's going on, but you should make sure your audio is clear. Then you're going to need some sort of software. And at the Open University, we've used Camtasia, and you can get a kind of a 1 month free trial, but you can also get Jing, which is the free version, and you can then, that's just 5 minutes though. And I just wanted to say, actually, could anybody, I see one person in the chat, Julia has said OBS Studio is free. Could you all just pop in the chat anything you've ever used for a screencast? Because I want to be able to save the chat anyway, and it would be nice to share some of your experiences of software and hardware. Okay, so we've got some people, it's good, and you're still awake as well. Right, these are loads of good suggestions. Brilliant. Excellent. Okay, I'm going to carry on talking while those keep scrolling. And somebody did just ask about Zoom, which I will come to it next. So if you are going to do a screencast, it does require quite a bit of concentration, actually. It is harder than, it's a lot harder than just teaching, let's face it, because you're focusing on what you're going to say, you're focusing on making your handwriting neat enough and the technology work and controlling the pressing record, pressing stop, pressing pause. And of course, it means that you flush your lines a lot more. So if you are going to do a screencast, some things you want to prepare in advance. So you've got your, whichever slides are prepared, and then you're going to get your handwriting on top of it. It helps if you have something, either you've got a prepared work solution you're working through, or you've got a storyboard or a script. I don't think it's the sort of thing where you can just go in and wing it. Then you're going to be recording as you go along, but I don't think anybody ever really goes through the whole thing and doesn't fluff their lines. So if you are if you're recording a screencast, every few sentences or so, leave a pause between your sentences. So you'll be talking and you'll give a slightly longer, unnatural pause. And then when you fluff your line a little bit later, you just go back to that last point, or you're just carrying on, and then you can snip out back to your last pause. So make some pauses, and then when you fluff your line, just stop, leave another pause, and say the line that you fluffed again, because you'll be able to snip that out. It's quite easy to snip on screencast recording. And just on the screen, I just wanted to put up what your handwritten slides might look like as you go along. Because one thing that I get pulled up on my screencasts is that because I'm explaining the maths verbally, I often then forget to write the maths correctly. You know, I'm not practicing good mathematical communication. So you should be aware that everything you write down should be of the quality you would want the student to give back to you. So do keep that in the mind at the same time. I tend to, if I've explained it, I feel like it's good enough to just jot something down. Well, if you're recording it, and then if you're going to deliver this to hundreds of students, you want it to be at the right quality that they should send back to you. Actually, one of the comments earlier was, could you please tell us how many students you deliver to? So in the OU, all materials go to several hundred students each year, and we use them for many years, which is why we put a lot of upfront effort into it. So make sure you're using good mathematical communication as you would want your students to. Okay, I've realized that I am now not as quick as I planned to be, so I'll start to speed up. Tutorial recordings, it's really useful. Like I say, the students carry on using them. Do you have a software option? Do you have a choice, or has your university chosen something for you? We all have to use Adobe Connect. It has lots of functions. It allows you to share lots of different things, you know, videos, PowerPoints. The students can chat at the same time. But I find it somehow impersonal, and I have found that Zoom is a little bit more immediate. And so to answer one of the queries before, why not use Zoom for a video? I would say it's a tutorial recording if you're using Zoom. Oh, thank you. Right, the clapping noise I was going to come to later. That's a comment in the chat there. Right, so tutorial recordings, please do it. Could everybody now make a comment in the chat as to what software they have used for synchronous tutorials, that is live tutorials. So if you've used something, if you've used Zoom, excepting today, has anybody used anything else? Okay, Microsoft Teams, yeah, Blackboard, great. I've never heard of Blue Jeans before. Google Hangouts, great. Okay, thanks for those suggestions. We'll be able to save all this later, so do keep typing them in. Finally, the other kind of videos you might do are pieces to camera. I think I can stop sharing now. Right, so here we are, piece to camera. And why might you choose to do this? It's technologically very simple. You know, all you're going to need is your mobile phone, and I would actually recommend a clip-on mic. You know, they're very cheap. And also you can very cheaply get a tripod. Okay, piece to camera, very simple, using your phone. You don't need to buy anything extra. So that's the plus side. It's also a lot more personal. I have seen tutorials where the person's just videoed themselves with a board, and I found that much easier to concentrate on and somehow more engaging, but that was just my impression. So it's something you might try. Your university will have been offering in the past media training, and in the future you might want to go for it, but at the minute it's not an option. But the short version for media training, which I can give you now, is when you're talking to your students, either on a screencast or on a piece of camera, smile, okay? It's easier to listen to a smiling face, whether you can see it or not. Slow down a little bit. I realise I've gone very fast, and I'm very sorry for the people from abroad if you could understand me being fast, but 13 minutes was a tall order. And can you make sure that you're not robot voice looking down virtually still, which is something that happens when you turn a camera on someone? Can you be animated? Can you move? Can you be moving your body and your hands so that actually people have something to look at and it's not painfully dull? The bad thing is it's harder to edit. So once you fluff your line on a piece to camera, because we all fluff our lines, you have to go back and start again. But let's say you get it right, then for any kind of recording, but especially for pieces to camera, the first thing you should do before you speak is to do a big clap. And then when you talk, you carry on with your recording. If anything goes wrong with your audio and it slips away from the video, you can tie it together by matching it to that clap. So that's just a top tip for pieces to camera. So we've covered screencasts, tutorial recordings, pieces to camera. The Open University focuses on written learning of maths and correspondence, but we do use videos for tricky pieces, and we know they do matter. So in contrast to the earlier speaker, our students use videos more compared to other resources. At the start of the module, they use everything, and at the end of the modules, you know, it's what they can still bear to do, and they still look at the videos, so we know that they do something for them. So I am a big advocate for video. It's just a question of how much time you've got to deliver to it. I think that, and a very, very, very last point is, it is all about the assessment. If you want the students to do something, assess them on it. If you want the students to talk back to you, assess them on it. You know, that they care about the grade, give them a grade for anything you want them to do. Okay, right, questions, sorry.
Right, thank you very much. Thank you. There's quite a lot of questions here now. Now it's my turn to do a piece to camera. I've actually, in my setup, I thought I'd light this up properly today, so I'm quite bright. But it does mean I've got 3 lights on me, and I'm burning up here now. I'm deeply regretting being perfectly lit. So a number of the questions are asking about handwritten notes. And I think we'll be dealing with that when we have Emma's talk, Emma Cliff's talk later on, which is about inclusion. So maybe some of those we can save till later. This idea of how do you make your handwriting accessible. So there was a question here. Are the students present comfortable with actively participating in a recorded tutorial, or does, oh, it's disappeared, or does the fact that the session is recorded make them wary of saying anything? I mean, what do you feel about that? Are they
Okay, well, I do a lot of tutorial observations, so I have seen students in different settings. And we now have the setup that we list the tutorial label as recorded or not recorded, so that students, have the option of which to attend. In the recorded settings, even at the end, we will say, right, we will switch the recording off if there's anything you wanted to ask that you weren't able to ask before. I don't think I would say I've noticed less participation in the recorded sessions. What I would say is that in tutorials, students are loath to participate. They will never use their microphones. The best I've ever seen is when they will chat at the start, and then as soon as the math starts, the silence starts. Boom, that's it. That's the end of them talking. They will use the chat box. They'll use that, and they will use that to ask questions and answer questions. You can set up anonymous polls, but I would say if you want them to speak back to you, good luck. That is definitely a struggle.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I'm busy having a look through the questions here, and it's so hard to pick them. I think I'm going to change the way we do questions, because we've got 57 open questions here. So
I'd be happy to type answers during the next session if that helps.
Yeah, there's lots of questions there. Okay, so we'll go with this one. Anonymous attendee, what are your tips for encouraging peer support while adhering to safeguarding policies? So, I mean, I'm assuming this is to do with being in the tutorials, I think.
I don't know. I think it was because I also said that students chat better on Facebook and WhatsApp when we're not there. Versus the moderated forums for safeguarding. So the OU runs moderated forums, and those things are safeguarded. They are not forbidden from doing things themselves outside of the Open University, and we're not responsible for them. And that is basically the answer to that. We have asked to join some Facebook groups, and the organizer of those groups is just happy for us to be there. And we just use that to be there for plagiarism. And there's nothing we could do about WhatsApp groups. But our students wouldn't have WhatsApp groups anyway, because they don't know each other. They don't have ways of exchanging phone numbers. They would only be able to find each other on a public space like Facebook. Whereas I know in face-to-face universities, they're all big buddies and they've got WhatsApp groups, and you really have no control over what they do on those.
Right, okay, thanks. So I'll ask this other one. It says, how do students share mathematical writing in an online tutorial? How do they do that in the OU?
I'm not sure I'd say that they do. One thing tutors might do is they would leave a one slide up, and then everybody can write on that slide. So, if they say that, one thing they might do at the start of a tutorial is put a map of the country up and say, draw where you are, just a way to get everybody in. And then people can draw things on any slides if they say, now put it up, and enable their writing tools. But in general, just to keep the sense that there is a person there going, it's usually done through the chat box, and that's where they want them to do it. And it's not mathematical writing as such. It isn't, you can't do an integration symbol. It will just be those shorter questions. It's got a limitation. I would say the limitation is more strongly from what the students are willing to do rather than the technology lets you do. Right.
Okay. And so here's another one, which is kind of to do with accessibility, and it's something that I've had some experience of over the last few weeks, because I've been trying to put captions on videos. So here's, do you do closed captions on videos, and what resources do the OU have for that? So it's the person, I don't know where they're from, but they said we are required to do it, but uni gives us no support. And adding captions more than doubles editing time. I would have thought triples. But anyway.
Yeah. We do it, but then this is what I was saying earlier. We have such a large student body that it is for certain that students within that group will have additional needs. So our publishing arm, when you give them a video, they go and caption it for you. So people are employed to put captions on for us. When it comes to recording tutorials, they are not captioned.
Yeah. Okay. Right. I think time's moving on. Now, so thank you very much, Katie, for that. So I'm going to give a round of applause there.